Chapter 1. The Terrace. He told the billionaire, "I'm a virgin," and her heart broke before she even touched him. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. He never thought a wrinkled napkin could hold so much courage. Marcus Chen adjusted the simple black suit he'd borrowed from his roommate, feeling the weight of every dollar he didn't have in his bank account. The hospital's annual charity dinner buzzed around him with conversations about tech acquisitions and investment portfolios, while he calculated how many tutoring sessions it would take to buy groceries this week. At 26, Marcus had mastered the art of belonging without fitting in. His angular features and carefully styled dark hair caught the chandelier's light, and his quiet confidence was something he'd cultivated through years of being the scholarship kid in rooms full of wealth. He moved through the crowd with careful grace, nodding politely at surgeons who knew him as the medical student from oncology and tech entrepreneurs who didn't know him at all. "Another champagne, sir." A waiter appeared beside him. "Just water, please," Marcus smiled, accepting the crystal glass. He'd learned that holding something made him look less out of place. The ballroom of the Meridian Hotel sparkled with the kind of wealth that made his student loans feel even heavier. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, downtown Seattle's lights twinkled like earthbound stars. Marcus pulled out his phone and snapped a quick photo of the reflection dancing across his water glass. Later, he'd post it on Instagram with a simple caption about finding light in unexpected places. His 1,200 followers had grown to appreciate his thoughtful observations and minimalist photography. The view's better from the terrace. Marcus turned to find a woman standing a respectful distance away, her posture relaxed but commanding. She was striking, probably early 30s, with rich brown skin that seemed to glow under the chandeliers and dark eyes that held something both intense and warm. Her emerald dress was understated but clearly expensive, the kind of elegant simplicity that whispered rather than shouted wealth. Her natural hair was styled in an elaborate updo that looked effortless, but had probably taken an hour to perfect. "I'm sorry," Marcus asked, not because he hadn't heard her, but because women at these events, especially women who looked like they owned the room, rarely spoke to him without an agenda. The city view from outside, less crowded too. She gestured toward the terrace doors with a slight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Marcus studied her face. No wedding ring, no predatory smile, just a genuine suggestion and patient eyes waiting for his answer. "I'm Jada," she said, extending her hand. "Jada Wilson." "Marcus," he shook her hand, surprised by how warm and firm her grip was. "Marcus Chen." Recognition flickered in his expression, though he tried to hide it. Marcus had heard whispers about Jada Wilson, the tech mogul who turned a single AI startup into an empire spanning healthcare, education, and sustainable energy. Forbes had called her the woman redefining innovation with conscience. But standing here, she just looked like someone seeking refuge from small talk. "Would you like to see that view, Marcus?" Her voice carried a subtle undertone of exhaustion beneath the professional warmth. He glanced back at the crowded ballroom, where Dr. Patterson was probably wondering where his student had disappeared to. Then at the terrace doors, promising cool air and honest conversation. "Lead the way." The Seattle evening embraced them with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of rain and possibilities. The terrace was empty, except for a few scattered couples lost in their own conversations. City lights stretched out below them like a constellation map, and Marcus immediately understood what Jada meant. The view was breathtaking. "Much better," he murmured, moving to the stone railing. "You looked like you needed rescuing." Jada joined him, maintaining that same respectful distance. "From what?" "The same thing I needed rescuing from. Conversations about disrupting markets and unicorn valuations." Marcus laughed, a genuine sound that surprised them both. "So you saw through my convincing act of belonging." "Your act was perfect. It was the relief in your eyes when you stepped outside that gave you away." They stood in comfortable silence, watching traffic move like blood cells through the city's arteries. Marcus noticed how Jada's shoulders seemed to relax out here, away from the performance required inside. "What do you do, Marcus?" she asked. "Besides rescue people from boring charity dinners." "I work as a tutor for pre-med students during the day, and I'm finishing my final year of medical school at UW. He paused, wondering if he should mention the debt that kept him awake at night or the studio apartment he shared with 2 roommates. "What about you, besides throwing boring charity dinners?" Jada smiled. "I didn't throw this one, I just write the checks." "Generous checks, I'm guessing." "Money's easy to give when you have it, time is harder." She turned to face him more fully. "You're studying to be a doctor." "Oncology. I want to work with patients who don't have enough resources, enough hope, enough people who see them as human beings first." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "Sorry, that sounds preachy." "It sounds honest." Jada's eyes held his. "In my experience, honesty is rarer than generosity." A comfortable quiet settled between them again. Marcus found himself studying her profile, the elegant line of her jaw, the way her eyes crinkled slightly when she smiled, the careful way she seemed to choose each word. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said, surprising himself with his boldness. "Anything." "Why did you really invite me out here?" Jada was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming softly against the railing. "Because in there, you were the only person who looked at the city lights instead of the designer watches." Marcus felt something flutter in his chest, a sensation both thrilling and terrifying. "And that matters because I've spent 15 years in rooms full of people who have forgotten how to see beautiful things." She turned to face him completely now, her expression serious. "And because I'd like to see you again, away from all this." The honesty in her voice made Marcus's breath catch. He looked down at the cocktail napkin he'd been unconsciously twisting in his hands, using it like a worry stone. This was the moment, the crossroads, where he could smile politely and return to his safe, predictable world, or step into something unknown. He took a deep breath, feeling the cool evening air fill his lungs. "If you want to see me again," he said softly, stepping slightly closer, "you should know something about me first." His heart hammered against his ribs, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm not like the other men you probably date. I've never been with anyone, not like that." The words hung in the air between them, vulnerable and brave. Marcus watched Jada's face carefully, waiting for the polite retreat, the sudden remembrance of somewhere else she needed to be. Instead, she reached out and gently took the napkin from his hands, her fingers brushing his. "Then let me earn the right to discover you," she said quietly, her voice rough with something that sounded like reverence. "However long that takes, however patient I need to be." She smiled, and Marcus saw something shift in her eyes, something that looked like wonder mixed with an emotion he couldn't quite name, something almost like pain. "I want to know everything about you, Marcus Chen, and I want to do it right." In that moment, with the Seattle skyline as their witness and the promise of something beautiful hanging in the air between them, Marcus realized his heart had already begun to trust this unexpected woman. And somewhere in the careful space between her words, Jada Wilson's heart quietly broke open, making room for a love she'd never dared to imagine, and a secret she'd carried for 15 years that would change everything. What would you do if someone offered to love you exactly as you are, at exactly your own pace, but they were hiding something that could shatter everything you thought you knew about them? Chapter 2, The Beginning of Everything. 5 days passed before Marcus found the courage to save her number in his phone. He stared at the business card Jada had pressed into his palm before they parted ways on the terrace, her elegant script reading simply, "Jada Wilson," with a phone number below. No corporate title, no flashy logo, just her name, as if that was all that mattered. Marcus sat cross-legged on his narrow twin bed in the studio apartment he shared with his roommates Tyler and Priya. Through the thin walls, he could hear Tyler's engineering textbooks being aggressively highlighted, and Priya practicing case studies for her MBA program. All 3 of them chasing dreams that felt simultaneously within reach and impossibly far away. His phone buzzed with a text from his younger sister in Portland. How was the fancy dinner, Jeej? Did you meet any nice billionaires? Marcus smiled, typing back something vague, but his thumb hovered over Jada's contact information. What did a tech billionaire text about? Board meetings, product launches, TED Talks. Finally, he typed, "Hi, it's Marcus from the terrace. Hope your week is going well." Simple, safe, honest. His phone rang within 3 minutes. Marcus, her voice was warm, carrying that same quiet confidence from the charity dinner. "I was hoping you'd reach out." "Were you?" He tucked his legs under him, suddenly aware that he was wearing his oldest sweatpants with a hole in the knee. "I've been thinking about our conversation, about what you said." Marcus's stomach fluttered. Which part? All of it, but especially the brave part. There was a pause, and he could almost see her choosing her words carefully. "I keep thinking about how you trusted me with something so personal. In a world where people hide behind filters and facades, you chose honesty. It felt important that you knew." "It was important, and I want you to know that I meant what I said, every word." Marcus closed his eyes, letting her voice wash over him. "Jada." "Yes." "What do you actually do when you're not writing checks for charity dinners?" Her laugh was low and genuine. "Right now, I'm sitting in my office at midnight, looking at acquisition proposals for a biotech company and wishing I was somewhere else entirely." "Where would you rather be?" "Honestly, on that terrace with you, watching the city lights." Marcus felt heat bloom in his chest. That's a very smooth answer. It's also true. He could hear papers rustling in the background. "What about you? What does Marcus Chen do when he's not saving the world one patient at a time?" "I take photos of random things and post them on Instagram with captions that probably sound pretentious." "Show me." Marcus hesitated. His Instagram wasn't polished or curated like the influencers with millions of followers. It was just him, raw thoughts and unfiltered observations. "It's nothing special." "I doubt that very much." 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself walking Jada through his recent posts via text message. A photo of frost patterns on his bus window at dawn. Another of his shadows stretching long across the hospital parking lot at sunset. The way light filtered through a patient's IV bag, turning saline into liquid gold. "These are beautiful," she texted. "You see poetry in ordinary moments." "You're just being nice." His phone rang again. "Marcus, I need you to understand something." Her voice was serious now. "I don't do nice for the sake of it. I've spent years surrounded by people who say what they think I want to hear. What you do, finding beauty in frost patterns and IV bags, that's not ordinary. That's extraordinary." Marcus was quiet for a moment, absorbing her words. "You really think so?" "I know so, and I'd like to see the world through your eyes if you'll let me." "What does that mean?" "It means I'd like to take you to dinner. Somewhere without charity auctions or networking opportunities. Just us, talking about things that matter." Marcus's heart raced. "I'd like that." "Saturday. I know you mentioned tutoring sessions, but..." "I can move things around. What time?" 7, I'll pick you up. Text me your address." After they hung up, Marcus stared at his reflection in his phone's black screen. A real date with Jada Wilson, the same woman who graced the covers of business magazines and had a Wikipedia page longer than most novels. His phone buzzed. "Marcus, where whatever makes you feel like yourself. I'm not interested in impressing anyone else." Saturday arrived with the kind of Seattle drizzle that made everything look softer around the edges. Marcus changed clothes 4 times before settling on dark jeans, a navy sweater his sister had given him for Christmas, and the only pair of boots he owned that didn't have scuff marks. At exactly 7:00 p.m., a text arrived. "I'm outside." Marcus grabbed his jacket and headed downstairs, expecting to see a sleek Tesla or maybe a chauffeured sedan. Instead, he found Jada leaning against a forest green Subaru Outback, hands in her pockets, wearing jeans and a cream-colored cashmere sweater that probably cost more than his monthly rent, but looked comfortable rather than ostentatious. "You look perfect," she said, opening the passenger door for him. "This is not what I expected you to drive," Marcus said, settling into the surprisingly worn seat. Jada smiled as she started the engine. "What did you expect?" "Something with a driver, and definitely more expensive." "I save the expensive cars for people I'm trying to impress. Tonight, I just want to be myself." She drove them to a small Ethiopian restaurant in Capitol Hill, the kind of place with mismatched furniture and art from local painters covering the walls. The owner greeted Jada by name, leading them to a corner table where candles flickered in colored glass holders. "You come here often?" Marcus asked, shrugging out of his jacket. "When I need to remember what real food tastes like." Jada settled across from him, and Marcus noticed how her shoulders seemed to relax, just like they had on the terrace. "The owner, Almaz, doesn't care how much money I have. She cares whether I finish my injera." As if summoned by her words, an elegant woman with silver-streaked hair and a bright yellow headwrap appeared at their table. "Jada, my dear," she reached down to squeeze Jada's shoulder affectionately. "You're too thin, working too much again. And who is this handsome young man?" "Almaz, this is Marcus. Marcus, this is the woman who makes the best Doro Wat in the Pacific Northwest." "Pleasure to meet you, Marcus." Almaz studied him with sharp, kind eyes. "You have good taste in women. This one, she has a good heart. Sometimes she forgets to listen to it, but good heart." After she bustled away with their order. Apparently Almaz didn't believe in menus either. Marcus looked at Jada with new curiosity. "She treats you like family." "She knew my mother." Jada's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across her features. "My mom used to bring me here when I was a kid, before," she trailed off. "Before what?" Jada met his eyes. "Before my world got complicated." She paused. "I like that you ask real questions, Marcus. Most people are afraid to." "I'm not most people." "No," she said softly, reaching across the table to brush her fingers against his. "You're definitely not." The gesture was simple, innocent, but Marcus felt it like electricity. He didn't pull away, and neither did she. "Tell me about your family," she said. "Small, just me, my younger sister Lily, and my mom in Portland. Dad left when I was 10, but honestly, we're better off without him." Marcus surprised himself with the honesty. "Mom worked 2 jobs to put me through undergrad. I'm the first in my family to go to medical school." "That's incredible." "She's incredible. I just hope I can pay her back someday." "Marcus," Jada's voice was gentle but firm, "you don't owe anyone anything for being loved." The words hit him like a physical force, and he had to look away, blinking back unexpected tears. "Hey," she said softly, "what did I say?" "Nothing wrong. It's just, sometimes I forget that love isn't supposed to come with debts attached." Jada was quiet for a long moment, her thumb still tracing gentle patterns on his knuckles. "Your turn to ask me a real question," she said finally. Marcus studied her face, the careful way she held herself, the shadows that lingered in her eyes despite her smile. "What are you afraid of, Jada Wilson?" The question hung between them like a bridge, daring her to cross it. She was quiet so long that Marcus wondered if he'd pushed too far. Then, "I'm afraid of wanting something so much that losing it would break me completely." The honesty in her voice made Marcus's breath catch. "And what do you want?" he whispered. Her eyes found his across the candle-lit table, and in them he saw something that looked like wonder mixed with terror, and something else. Something that looked almost like guilt. "I think I'm starting to figure that out." But even as she said it, Marcus noticed the way her free hand had moved to her abdomen, just for a second. A protective gesture so quick he almost missed it. And in that moment, though he didn't know it yet, Jada Wilson was carrying a secret that would change both their lives forever. A secret that had started 15 years ago, with a choice she'd made alone. A secret that was about to become impossible to hide. What would you do if the person you were falling for was keeping something from you? Something that could either bring you closer together or tear you apart forever. Chapter 3, The Truth in Shadows. The text arrived at 6:47 a.m., just as Marcus was rushing to catch the bus to his morning tutoring session. "Good morning. I know you're probably running late, but I wanted you to know I haven't stopped thinking about last night." Marcus paused on the sidewalk, his breath visible in the crisp Seattle morning air. Around him, the city was waking up, coffee shop workers unlocking doors, early commuters clutching travel mugs, the familiar hum of a world in motion. But for a moment, everything felt suspended. "I keep thinking about it too," he typed back, then hesitated before adding, "especially what you said about wanting something." 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Can I see you tonight? I want to cook for you." Marcus's eyebrows shot up. "You cook?" "I'm learning. Fair warning, it might be terrible." Despite everything, the early hour, the stress of exams looming, the weight of his student loans, Marcus found himself smiling. "I love terrible cooking. What time?" 7. I'll send you my address." That evening, Marcus stood outside the address Jada had sent him, double-checking the number on his phone. The building was in Madison Park, elegant but understated, the kind of place where wealth whispered rather than shouted. Through the lobby's floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see modern art and a doorman in a subtle suit. "You must be Marcus." The doorman smiled warmly. "Ms. Wilson is expecting you, penthouse level." In the elevator, Marcus caught his reflection in the polished steel doors. He'd changed out of his tutoring clothes into dark jeans and a burgundy Henley, adding the leather jacket his sister had found for him at a thrift store. Simple, but it felt like him. The elevator opened directly into Jada's apartment, and Marcus stepped into a space that took his breath away. Floor to ceiling, windows showcased the Seattle skyline at golden hour, while warm wood floors and carefully chosen furniture created an atmosphere that was luxurious, but somehow still felt like home. What surprised him most was how lived in it felt. Books scattered on the coffee table, a throw blanket draped over the couch, framed photographs on the shelves that looked personal rather than decorative. "Marcus." Jada appeared from what he assumed was the kitchen, wearing dark jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked more relaxed than he'd ever seen her, and somehow more beautiful for it. "You found it okay." "Your doorman knows my name. I felt very fancy." "Robert's great. He's worked here longer than I've lived here." Jada moved closer, and Marcus caught the scent of something delicious wafting from the kitchen. "How was your day?" "Long. One of my students had a panic attack before our session about organic chemistry." Marcus shrugged off his jacket. "How was yours? Any billion-dollar deals?" "Just one." Her smile was teasing. "But I kept getting distracted thinking about a certain medical student." "Tutor," Marcus corrected. "Still a student myself." "Right, and you're terrible at accepting compliments." "I'm learning that too." She led him toward the kitchen, which was clearly the heart of the apartment. Unlike the rest of the space, this room showed signs of actual use. Cookbook pages marked with sticky notes, grocery bags from Pike Place Market on the counter, and the unmistakable chaos of someone who was definitely still learning to cook. "What's the damage?" Marcus asked, surveying the scene. "I attempted Thai curry." She gestured toward the sink where a pot was soaking. "The first batch. Let's just say I learned that coconut milk can separate in ways I didn't know were possible." Marcus laughed, a real laugh that filled the space between them. "Want some help?" "I was hoping you'd ask." They worked side by side, Marcus's hands guiding hers as they salvaged the curry. She showed him her grandmother's recipe card, yellowed with age and covered in handwritten notes. He taught her the trick his mother had shown him about balancing flavors. The intimacy was casual, comfortable, like they'd done this 100 times before. "Where did you learn to cook?" Jada asked, watching his efficient movements. "Necessity. When Mom was working double shifts, I had to figure out how to feed myself and Lily." Marcus tasted the sauce, adding a pinch more lime juice. "Plus, it's calming. There's something about creating something good with your hands." "I never learned. Growing up, we had people for that." Jada's hands stilled on the vegetables she was chopping. "My parents were always working, building the company. I spent more time with our housekeeper than with them. Marcus heard something in her voice, not quite sadness, but a kind of wistful longing. Were you close to them? Jada was quiet for a long moment. My father died when I was 17. Massive heart attack during a board meeting, my mother. She threw herself into work even harder after that. Died 3 years later from what the doctors called exhaustion, but I think it was really a broken heart. She set down the knife. I inherited everything at 20. The company, the money, the expectations. I've been trying to prove I deserved it ever since. Marcus reached out and touched her arm gently. Jada, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Don't I? She turned to face him, and Marcus saw something raw in her expression. Everyone thinks I just got lucky, that I inherited success. They don't see the 70-hour weeks, the impossible decisions, the weight of knowing that thousands of people's livelihoods depend on choices I make. That sounds lonely. It is, she met his eyes, or it was until recently. They moved to the dining table by the windows, the city lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled over Seattle. The curry was actually perfect, creamy and fragrant, with vegetables that still had a satisfying crunch. So what happens now? Marcus asked, setting down his fork. With us, I mean, what do you want to happen? Jada was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the condensation of her water glass. I want to keep getting to know you, but Marcus, I need to be honest about something. His heart rate picked up. Okay. My life is complicated, not just the work, but... She paused, seeming to struggle with her words. There are things about me, about my past, that might change how you see me. Like what? Jada stood abruptly, moving to the window. The skyline painted her in silhouette, and Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders. When I was 19, I made a choice I've never told anyone about. Marcus waited, his pulse pounding in his ears. I had a baby. The words came out barely above a whisper. A daughter, and I gave her up for adoption. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus felt like the floor had shifted beneath him. I was in my second year at MIT, Jada continued, her voice stronger now. The guy was nobody important, just a stupid mistake at a party. When I found out I was pregnant, my mother was furious. She said a baby would ruin everything, destroy the company's image, destroy my future. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass. She arranged everything. A private adoption, sealed records, and DAs. I held my daughter for 10 minutes after she was born, and then they took her away. Marcus stood slowly, processing. How old would she be now? 15, almost 16. Jada's voice cracked. And Marcus, I think about her every single day. I wonder if she's happy, if her parents love her, if she ever thinks about me. I've spent 15 years trying to be someone worthy of having made that sacrifice. Is that why you work so hard? Why you're so afraid of wanting things? Maybe. She turned to face him, and Marcus saw tears streaming down her face. Or maybe I work so hard because if I stop, I'll have to face what I gave up, what I lost. Marcus crossed the room to her, and without hesitation, pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against him, her body shaking with silent sobs. I'm sorry, she gasped. I shouldn't dump this on you, it's too much too soon. Jada, Marcus pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands. Thank you for trusting me with this. You're not, you don't think less of me. Less of you? Marcus wiped her tears with his thumbs. Jada, you were 19 years old, being pressured by your mother, facing an impossible choice. You gave your daughter a chance at a life you couldn't give her then. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's love. She let out a shaky breath. I've never told anyone, not a single person in 15 years. Why tell me now? Jada's eyes searched his face. Because I'm falling in love with you, Marcus, and I can't build something real with you while keeping the most important part of my story hidden. She paused. And because there's more. Marcus felt his stomach drop. More. 3 weeks ago, I hired a private investigator to find her. Jada's voice was trembling. The adoption was supposed to be closed, sealed forever. But I have resources, connections. I found her, Marcus. I know where she lives, what school she goes to, what her name is. Have you contacted her? No, I needed to see her to know she's okay. Jada pulled out her phone with shaking hands, opening a photo. Her name is Sophie Martinez. She lives in Portland. Marcus looked at the photo of a teenage girl with Jada's eyes and her mother's smile, standing in a soccer uniform with a trophy. She looked happy, confident, loved. "She's beautiful," he said softly. "She looks like my father." Jada's voice was full of wonder and pain. "I see him in her face, and it's like getting a piece of him back." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to reach out to tell her who I am. But what if she hates me? What if I ruin the life she has?" Jada sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "And part of me feels guilty even watching her from afar. Like I'm stalking this child I gave up the right to know." Marcus sat beside her, taking her hand. "Jada, there's no right answer here. This is complicated and messy, and there's no guidebook for it." "I know, but Marcus, if we do this, if we try to build something together, you need to know that this is part of my life now. Finding Sophie, figuring out if and how to be part of her world. It might get complicated. It might blow up in my face, and I won't blame you if that's too much to sign up for." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. This was a lot, more than he'd expected when he'd stepped into her apartment tonight. But as he looked at Jada, vulnerable and raw and trusting him with her deepest secret, he realized something fundamental. "I'm not going anywhere," he said firmly. "Marcus, I mean it. This doesn't change how I see you. If anything, it makes me understand you better." He squeezed her hand. "You've spent 15 years carrying this alone. You don't have to carry it alone anymore." Jada looked at him with something like disbelief. "How are you real?" "I could ask you the same thing." Marcus pulled her closer, and she curled against his side, her head on his shoulder. "Jada, everyone has complicated pasts. Everyone has choices they wonder about. Yours just happens to involve a daughter you've never stopped loving." They sat in silence for a while, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. Marcus could feel Jada's breathing slowly evening out, the tension leaving her body. "Can I tell you something?" she said eventually. "Always. When I saw you on that terrace, looking at the city lights like they were magic, I saw Sophie. She has that same wonder, that same ability to find beauty in small things." Jada's voice was soft. "Maybe that's why I was drawn to you. Some part of me recognized that quality I see in her." "Or maybe," Marcus said gently, "you were drawn to me because we're supposed to find each other. And maybe finding Sophie is part of that journey." Jada tilted her head to look at him, her eyes red but clear. "You really mean that?" "I really mean that. And Jada, if and when you decide to reach out to her, I'll be right beside you, supporting you whatever happens. Even though we've only known each other for a week." Marcus smiled. "Some people spend years together and never really know each other. Some people meet and immediately recognize something true." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I don't know what we are yet, but I know it matters. And I know I want to be here for all of it, the beautiful parts and the complicated parts." Jada was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I have something else to tell you." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "Okay." "Sophie's birthday is in 3 weeks. She'll be 16. Jada sat up, facing him fully. "Her parents, her adoptive parents, they're good people. I've been researching them. They sent me updates for the first 5 years, pictures and letters through the adoption agency. They stopped when my mother threatened legal action, said we had an agreement." "Your mother sounds like she was difficult." "She was terrified of anything that might threaten the company's image. After she died, I found all the letters and photos she'd hidden from me. 5 years of Sophie's life that I missed because my mother decided I didn't deserve to know my own daughter." Jada's voice hardened. "I've spent years being angry about that, but recently I've been thinking, what if I sent her something for her birthday, not revealing who I am, just letting her know someone's thinking of her?" "Like what?" "I don't know, something meaningful, something that says," Jada trailed off, struggling. "Something that says you've always loved her, even from afar," Marcus finished quietly. "Yes, exactly that." Jada squeezed his hand. "Is that crazy?" "No, it's beautiful." Marcus thought for a moment. "What does she love, from what you've learned about her?" "Soccer. She's apparently amazing at it, made varsity as a freshman. and she volunteers at an animal shelter. Jada smiled through fresh tears. She wants to be a veterinarian, and she writes poetry. Her English teacher posted some of her work on the school's literary magazine site, and Marcus, it's gorgeous. She has this way with words that just. She got that from you, Marcus said. The way you talk about innovation, about wanting to make the world better, that's poetry too. Jada looked at him with such tenderness it made his chest ache. How do you always know exactly what to say? I don't, I'm just telling you what I see. He paused. What if you sponsored something in her name? At the animal shelter where she volunteers. Not directly to her, but something that would touch her life. Jada's eyes widened. That's perfect. Anonymous enough that it doesn't violate the adoption agreement, but meaningful enough that she might notice. And maybe, Marcus added carefully, it's a first step, a way of being present in her life without disrupting it. They talked late into the night, sprawled on Jada's couch, brainstorming ideas and possibilities. Marcus learned that Sophie's adoptive parents, Carmen and David Martinez, were both teachers. Carmen taught high school English, David taught middle school science. They lived in a modest home in southeast Portland, and from everything Jada had discovered, they loved Sophie fiercely. Part of me is so grateful to them, Jada admitted. They gave her everything I couldn't, stability, attention, a normal childhood, but part of me is jealous too. They got to see her first steps, hear her first words, be there for every moment I missed. That's allowed, Marcus said. Both things can be true at once. As the night grew late, Marcus knew he should leave, catch the last bus back to his apartment. But something made him stay. The vulnerability in Jada's eyes, the way she kept holding his hand like he might disappear. Stay, she said quietly, as if reading his mind. Just to sleep, I don't want to be alone tonight. Okay. She led him to her bedroom, giving him one of her oversized t-shirts to sleep in. They lay in her bed, properly dressed, maintaining respectful distance. But in the darkness, Jada's hand found his. Marcus. Yeah. Thank you for not running away, for not judging me, for just being here. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. In the quiet that followed, Marcus found himself thinking about the complexity of love, how it wasn't just about romance or attraction, but about seeing someone's deepest wounds and choosing to stay anyway. How it was about building something together, piece by piece, even when the foundation was cracked. And somewhere in that darkness, holding the hand of a woman who'd trusted him with her most painful secret, Marcus realized he was already falling in love with not just who Jada was, but who she was becoming, someone brave enough to finally reach for what she'd lost. What neither of them knew was that in Portland, a 16-year-old girl named Sophie Martinez was lying in her own bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering about the woman who'd given birth to her, wondering if she ever thought about her, wondering if she'd ever find the courage to search for answers. And the universe, in its infinite complexity, was already conspiring to bring them together. Chapter 4, The Girl Who Asked Questions. Sophie Martinez had always known she was adopted. Her parents had never hidden it from her. There were photo albums from the day they'd brought her home, children's books about families built in different ways, honest conversations around the dinner table about what adoption meant. What they hadn't told her was anything about her birth mother. The adoption was closed, Mija, her mom, Carmen, had explained when Sophie was old enough to ask. It means we don't have information about her, but I can tell you this, she loved you very much, enough to want you to have a life she couldn't give you. That answer had satisfied Sophie when she was 8. At 16, it felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. She sat in her room in Portland, her soccer cleats kicked off in the corner, her laptop open to a search page she'd been staring at for an hour. How to find your birth mother in Washington State. The cursor blinked, waiting. Sophie, dinner, her dad's voice called from downstairs. She closed the laptop quickly, guilt flooding through her. It felt like betrayal, wanting to know. Her parents had given her everything. A loving home, support for her soccer dreams, help with her college applications, patience with her teenage moods. What right did she have to want more? But the wanting never went away. At dinner, Sophie pushed rice around her plate while her parents talked about their days. Her mom had assigned The Great Gatsby to her junior class and was dealing with complaints. Her dad had successfully gotten his 8th graders excited about photosynthesis through some creative experiments. "How was practice, Sophie?" her dad asked. "Good. Coach says I should talk to college scouts at the tournament next month." "That's wonderful," her mom beamed. "Any schools you're thinking about?" "Maybe UW. They have a good pre-vet program and a strong soccer team." Sophie paused. "Plus, Seattle's not that far." Something flickered across her parents' faces, too quick to read, but Sophie noticed it anyway. "What?" she asked. "Nothing, honey," her mom said, but her smile was tight. "Seattle's a great city." Later, after helping with dishes, Sophie retreated to her room and opened her laptop again. This time, she clicked on a link, a genetic testing service that advertised the ability to find biological relatives. $99 for answers she'd been wanting her whole life. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend Maya. "Still coming to the shelter tomorrow." "Yep, need to finish my volunteer hours." The animal shelter was Sophie's favorite place. She'd started volunteering there 2 years ago, and it had confirmed what she'd always known. She wanted to work with animals. The way they trusted you, the way they healed, the way they loved without complications. It made sense in a way human relationships sometimes didn't. The next day, Sophie was cleaning kennels when her supervisor, Mrs. Chen, called her into the office. "Sophie, something wonderful has happened. We've received an anonymous donation, a significant one. The donor specifically requested it be used to expand our medical facilities." Mrs. Chen's eyes were bright with excitement. "They want to create a new wing for surgical recovery. And Sophie, they've asked that we name it the Hope Wing." "That's amazing. How much did they donate?" $250,000. Sophie nearly dropped the mop she was holding. "What?" "I know. It's extraordinary. The donor sent a letter explaining they wanted to support the work of young volunteers who show exceptional dedication to animal welfare." Mrs. Chen smiled. "Your name was specifically mentioned, Sophie. They said watching young people like you give so selflessly inspired them to give back." Sophie felt something flutter in her chest, confusion mixed with an inexplicable feeling she couldn't name. "They mentioned me by name." "Not exactly. The letter mentioned a young woman named Sophie who volunteers every Saturday and dreams of being a veterinarian. There aren't many Sophies here, and you're our only aspiring vet." "Can I see the letter?" Mrs. Chen hesitated. The donor requested anonymity, but they did say they hope this donation helps many animals find their way home. Isn't that lovely? That night, Sophie couldn't sleep. Something about the donation felt personal in a way she couldn't explain. Who would give that much money and specifically mention her? It had to be someone who knew her, watched her, cared about what mattered to her. She opened her laptop and stared at the genetic testing site again. Then, before she could talk herself out of it, she entered her credit card information, money saved from birthday gifts and her part-time job at the local library. 3 weeks for results, 3 weeks to potentially find answers. But what Sophie didn't know was that in Seattle, Jada Wilson was staring at her own laptop screen, looking at the same photo of the Hope Wing donation announcement that the shelter had posted on their website. In it, Sophie stood beside Mrs. Chen, holding a recovering puppy, her smile radiant. And Marcus, sitting beside Jada on her couch, squeezed her hand as tears streamed down her face. "She looks so happy," Jada whispered. "She does. Did I do the right thing, making the donation? What if she figures out it's from me? What if—" "Jada," Marcus turned her face toward him gently. "You did something beautiful. You found a way to be present in her life without disrupting it. That's exactly what you hoped for." "But what if she wants to know who did it? What if she starts asking questions?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. Would that be so bad, if she started looking? Jada's eyes widened. "Marcus, the adoption agreement says you can't contact her directly until she's 18. It doesn't say anything about what happens if she finds you." He paused. Jada, what if she's been looking too? What if she wants to know you as much as you want to know her? I can't let myself hope for that. It's too much. But even as she said it, Jada felt something shift inside her, a door opening to a possibility she'd kept locked for 15 years. 3 days later, Jada's phone rang with an unknown Portland number. Her hands shook as she answered. Ms. Wilson, a woman's voice, professional but warm. Yes. This is Carmen Martinez. I'm Sophie's mother. The world stopped spinning. Jada couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't. Please don't hang up, Carmen said quickly. I'm not calling to threaten legal action or anything like that. I'm calling because… She paused. I'm calling because Sophie submitted her DNA to one of those genetic testing services, and I think it's time we talked. Jada's legs gave out. She sank onto her couch, Marcus immediately at her side, his hand on her shoulder. How did you get my number? Jada managed to ask. The adoption agency. When you made that donation to the animal shelter, they contacted me. It's protocol when a birth parent makes contact, even indirectly. Carmen's voice softened. Jada, I've known who you are since the beginning. Your mother insisted on NDAs, but she couldn't stop me from knowing your name. I don't understand. Sophie is asking questions, real questions. She's always known she was adopted, but lately, something's changed. She's searching, Jada, and I think she has a right to find answers. Carmen took a shaky breath. And I think you have a right to give them. What are you saying? I'm saying that in 3 weeks, Sophie turns 16. We're throwing her a birthday party, just family and close friends, and I'd like to invite you. Carmen paused. Not as a stranger. Sophie deserves to know the truth. She deserves to meet you if she wants to. Jada felt tears streaming down her face. Carmen, I never wanted to disrupt her life. I never wanted to take her away from you. You've been her mother in every way that matters. And you gave her life. You gave her to us. Jada, I've spent 16 years grateful to you and 16 years terrified that you'd want her back. But I'm tired of being afraid. And more importantly, Sophie deserves the truth. Does she know you're calling me? No, but she will. I'm telling her tonight. Carmen's voice cracked slightly. I'm terrified if I'm honest. Terrified she'll love you more, terrified she'll want to leave, terrified of everything changing. But David, my husband, he reminded me that love isn't a finite resource. Sophie has enough heart to love us and know you too, if she wants to. What if she doesn't want to meet me? Then we respect that. But Jada, I've seen her staring at her baby photos, asking questions about why her eyes are green when ours are brown, wondering about the parts of herself she doesn't understand. She needs this, and I think you do too. After Carmen hung up, Jada sat in stunned silence. Marcus pulled her into his arms, and she sobbed against his chest, relief and terror and hope all tangled together. She wants to meet me, Jada gasped between sobs. Marcus, my daughter wants to meet me. I know, he held her tighter, and you're going to be amazing. What if I disappoint her? What if she hates me for giving her up? What if… Jada, Marcus pulled back to look at her. What if she loves you? What if this is the beginning of something beautiful? That night in Portland, Carmen Martinez sat down with her daughter at the kitchen table. Sophie knew immediately that something serious was happening. Her parents only used this table for big conversations. Sophie, honey, we need to talk about something important, Carmen began, her hands shaking slightly. Okay, Sophie felt her stomach drop. Were they sick, getting divorced, moving? It's about your birth mother. The world tilted. What about her? Carmen took a deep breath. I know who she is. I've always known. And recently, she's been trying to find a way to be part of your life. The donation to the animal shelter, that was from her, Sophie. She's been watching you, being proud of you, wanting to help you from afar. Sophie felt like she couldn't breathe. You know who she is, and you never told me. The adoption had strict terms. We weren't supposed to have contact, but honey, things have changed. Carmen reached across the table. She wants to meet you, if you want to meet her. Who is she? Sophie's voice was barely a whisper. Her name is Jada Wilson, and Sophie, she's been looking for you too. Sophie grabbed her phone with shaking hands, typing the name into Google. And there she was, Jada Wilson, tech CEO, philanthropist, innovator. Articles about her companies, her charitable work, her rise to success. And photos where Sophie could see it. The same green eyes, the same curve of her smile, the same way of tilting her head when thinking. She gave me up because she was 19, Sophie said, reading through an old interview where Jada mentioned making difficult choices young. She was in college. She was young and scared and wanted you to have more than she could give you then, Carmen said gently. That doesn't mean she didn't love you. I think it means she loved you very much. Sophie looked up at her mom, the woman who'd raised her, bandaged her skinned knees, cheered at her soccer games, helped her through heartbreaks and homework and everything in between. Are you worried I'll love her more than you? Carmen's eyes filled with tears, maybe a little. Mom, Sophie moved around the table, hugging her mother tightly. You're my mom, that doesn't change, but, she pulled back. I want to meet her, I want to know where I came from. Then we'll make it happen. Carmen wiped her eyes. For your birthday, we'll invite her to your birthday. That night, Sophie lay in bed, staring at photos of Jada Wilson on her phone. Her birth mother was brilliant, successful, beautiful, and she'd been thinking about Sophie, watching her, caring from afar. Sophie felt something crack open inside her, not the wound of abandonment she'd always feared, but something else. Hope, possibility, the chance to fill in the blank spaces of her story. She didn't know that in Seattle, Jada was doing the same thing, staring at photos of Sophie, marveling at the young woman her daughter had become, terrified and hopeful in equal measure. And Marcus, watching Jada, understood that he was witnessing something profound. Not just a mother and daughter moving toward each other after 15 years apart, but two people brave enough to reach for something they'd been told was impossible. The question was, what would happen when they finally met? And could love survive the truth of everything that had been lost and found? Chapter 5, The Birthday That Changed Everything. The morning of Sophie's 16th birthday arrived with the kind of Portland rain that felt like tears from the sky. Jada stood in her hotel room, staring at her reflection in the mirror, trying to recognize the woman looking back at her. She'd changed outfits 4 times. The business suit felt too formal, too much like she was trying to impress. The casual jeans felt disrespectful, like she wasn't taking this seriously enough. Finally, she'd settled on a simple navy dress with a cream cardigan, something that said she'd tried, but not too hard. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, watching her with patient eyes. He'd driven down with her yesterday, refusing to let her face this alone. What if she hates me? Jada whispered, her hands shaking as she tried to fasten her necklace. Marcus stood, moving behind her to help with the clasp. Then you'll survive it. But Jada, I don't think that's what's going to happen. How can you be sure? I can't, but I know that girl's been looking for you just as hard as you've been looking for her. That has to mean something. Jada turned to face him, and Marcus saw the raw terror in her eyes. This woman who commanded boardrooms, who'd built an empire, who faced down investors and competitors without flinching, she was completely undone by the prospect of meeting her own daughter. What if I disappoint her? What if she looks at me and sees just money, not a mother, not someone who loved her enough to give her up? Then you tell her the truth. You tell her every single thing you've told me. Marcus cupped her face gently. You tell her that you've thought about her every day for 15 years, that you've been carrying her in your heart even when you couldn't carry her in your arms. The party was at the Martinez house, a modest craftsman in a quiet neighborhood where kids played basketball in driveways and neighbors knew each other's names. Jada felt completely out of place as Marcus parked his rental car across the street. Through the window, she could see balloons, people moving inside, the warm glow of a home filled with love and laughter. Sophie's home. The home Jada had given her by giving her away. I can't do this, Jada said suddenly, her hand on the door handle but unable to open it. Marcus, I can't. What was I thinking? She has a family, a beautiful life. I'm just going to ruin everything. Jada. No, this was a mistake. We should go. I'll send a gift, something anonymous. The front door opened, and Carmen Martinez stepped out onto the porch. She was smaller than Jada had imagined, with warm brown eyes and graying hair pulled back in a simple bun. She looked like a teacher, like a mother, like everything Jada had never been. Carmen walked toward the car, and there was nothing for Jada to do but get out. Jada, Carmen's voice was gentle. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come. This was selfish, I should. Stop, Carmen reached out and took Jada's hands. You should breathe. You should remember that you're here because my daughter wants to meet you, and because you deserve to meet her. How can you be so kind to me? I'm the woman who gave birth to your daughter and then disappeared. Carmen's eyes filled with tears. You're the woman who gave me my daughter, who gave me the greatest gift of my life. How could I be anything but grateful? The two women stood in the rain, both crying, both mothers to the same child in different ways. Is she nervous? Jada finally asked. Terrified, she's changed clothes 6 times. Carmen smiled through her tears. She gets that from you, apparently. Inside, the house smelled like birthday cake and tamales, the sound of laughter and Spanish music filling the air. Sophie's family and friends had gathered, but Carmen had asked them to give Sophie and Jada privacy for their first meeting. She's in the kitchen, Carmen said softly. She wanted to help with the food. She always cooks when she's nervous. Jada walked through the living room, past photos of Sophie at every age, first day of school, soccer tournaments, family vacations, quinceañera. 15 years of life that Jada had missed, captured in frames on the walls. And then she saw her. Sophie stood at the counter, frosting cupcakes with intense concentration, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing jeans and a soccer jersey. She looked up when Jada entered, and their eyes met. The same green eyes, the same depth, the same questions. For a moment, neither of them moved. They just stared at each other, trying to recognize something they'd never known but had always missed. Hi, Sophie said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Hi, Jada's voice broke. Happy birthday. Thanks. Sophie set down the frosting, wiping her hands on a towel nervously. You came. I came, if that's okay, if you want me here. I do, Sophie paused. I think I do. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to feel right now. Me neither. They stood in awkward silence, separated by 15 years and 6 feet of kitchen tile that felt like an ocean. You look like your grandfather, Jada said finally. My father. He died when I was 17, but you have his smile, his eyes. Yeah, Sophie touched her face self-consciously. What was he like? Brilliant, kind. He used to say that the best innovations came from asking better questions, not finding faster answers. Jada felt tears building. You would have loved him. He would have loved you. Why did you give me up? The question came out raw, unfiltered. Everyone says it was because you were young, because you wanted better for me, but I need to hear it from you. Jada felt the floor shift beneath her. This was it, the moment she'd been dreading and preparing for since Carmen's phone call. I was 19, she began, her voice shaking. Sophomore at MIT, your biological father was, nobody important, a mistake. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. She paused, gathering courage. My mother, she ran our family's company. Everything was about image, control, perfection. She said a baby would destroy everything we'd built. She arranged the adoption, hired lawyers, made it all go away. But what did you want? Sophie's voice was sharp. Not your mother, you. Jada met her daughter's eyes, and in them she saw herself at 19 angry, scared, searching for truth in a world that offered only complications. I wanted to keep you, Jada whispered. God, Sophie, I wanted to keep you so much it felt like dying to let you go. But I was a kid myself. I had no money of my own, no support system, no idea how to be a mother. And my mother made it very clear, if I kept you, she'd cut me off completely. No college, no inheritance, nothing. So you chose money over me. The words hit like a physical blow. Jada actually staggered backward. No, Sophie, I chose your future over my present. I chose giving you parents who could focus on you completely over making you live in my mother's shadow. I chose. Her voice broke. I chose knowing you'd have everything I couldn't give you over the selfish want to keep you close. Did you ever think about me? Sophie's voice was small now, vulnerable. Every single day. Jada was fully crying now. Every birthday, every Christmas, every ordinary Tuesday. I wondered what you looked like, what made you laugh, what dreams you had. I built my entire life trying to become someone worthy of the sacrifice I made. But you never came looking for me, not until now. The adoption was closed. Your parents, Carmen and David, they sent me updates for the first 5 years. Photos, letters about your first words, your first steps. My mother hid them from me. I didn't find them until after she died. Jada wiped her tears. When I finally saw you, I spent 2 years paralyzed by guilt and fear. And then I hired an investigator. I found you. I've been watching from afar, being proud of you, wanting so desperately to be part of your life but terrified of disrupting it. Sophie was crying too now, angry tears that streaked down her face. You should have fought for me. You should have told your mother to screw herself. You should have. You're right. Jada's voice was steady despite her tears. You're absolutely right. I should have been braver. I should have fought harder. I should have chosen you over everything else. She took a shaky breath. But Sophie, I was a terrified 19-year-old with no resources and no power. And I made the best choice I could with what I had. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to understand that I loved you. I've always loved you. Sophie stood there, her body shaking with sobs, and Jada wanted nothing more than to cross that space and hold her. But she didn't. She waited, letting Sophie process, letting her feel everything she needed to feel. I hate that I understand, Sophie finally said. I hate that part of me knows you did what you thought was best, because the other part of me just wants to be angry, wants someone to blame for feeling incomplete my whole life. Then be angry, blame me, I can take it. But that's not fair either, Sophie's voice rose. Because Mom and Dad, Carmen and David, they've been amazing. They've loved me and supported me and been everything parents should be. And feeling like something's missing feels like saying they weren't enough. And they are enough. They've always been enough. Sophie, Carmen's voice came from the doorway. She'd been listening, tears streaming down her face. Loving her doesn't mean loving us less. You have room in your heart for both. But what if I don't? Sophie turned to Carmen, anguish written across her face. What if letting her in means losing you? Oh, baby. Carmen crossed the kitchen and pulled Sophie into her arms. You could never lose me. I'm your mother. That doesn't change because you meet the woman who gave birth to you. Jada watched them, mother and daughter, holding each other, crying together, and felt something break inside her chest. This was what she'd given up. This intimacy, this bond, this unconditional love. She'd given Sophie the chance to have this, and now she had to live with watching it from the outside. I should go, Jada said quietly. This was too much too soon, I'm sorry. Wait, Sophie pulled away from Carmen, wiping her face. I'm not ready for you to leave yet. Sophie. I'm angry and confused, and I don't know how to feel about any of this. But I spent 15 years wondering about you. I'm not ready to let you walk away after 5 minutes. They moved to the living room, the 3 of them, birth mother, adoptive mother, and the daughter they both loved. Marcus stayed in the kitchen, giving them space, but Jada could feel his presence like an anchor. They talked for hours. Sophie asked questions, hard questions about the adoption, about Jada's life, about whether she'd ever wanted other children. Jada answered honestly, even when the truth hurt. I never had other children, Jada admitted. Part of me felt like I didn't deserve to after giving you up. Part of me was just too afraid to try again. That's sad, Sophie said quietly. It is, but Sophie, you need to understand something. You weren't a mistake. You were the most important thing that ever happened to me. And even though I couldn't keep you, you made me want to be better. Every success I've had, every company I've built, every life I've tried to improve, it's all been me trying to become someone you could be proud of. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you've never met. I know, I'm sorry. As the afternoon wore into evening, the tension began to ease. Sophie showed Jada her room, her soccer trophies, her poetry journals. Jada shared photos on her phone, pictures of Sophie's grandfather, stories about her grandmother who'd loved poetry, the genetic legacy Sophie carried without knowing it. "I write poetry too," Sophie said, surprised. "I didn't know that ran in families." "Talent doesn't, but the way we see the world, that's inherited." Jada smiled through fresh tears. "You got the best parts of both sides." But as the party guests began to arrive, as Sophie was pulled away to celebrate with friends, Jada felt the reality settling in. This wasn't a fairy tale. Meeting Sophie didn't erase 15 years of absence. It didn't make them mother and daughter in any real sense. She pulled Carmen aside as Sophie laughed with her soccer teammates. "Thank you," Jada said quietly, "for letting me be here, for giving me this gift." "What will you do now?" Carmen asked. "I don't know. Sophie has my number. If she wants to talk, to see me again, I'll be there. But Carmen, I'm not trying to take your place. You're her mother in every way that matters. And you're her mother in a different way. We both matter, Jada. We just matter differently." As Jada prepared to leave, Sophie caught her at the door. "Will I see you again?" Sophie asked. "Do you want to?" Sophie paused, considering. "I think so, maybe, I don't know yet." "That's fair." Jada touched Sophie's face gently, the first time she'd allowed herself that intimacy. "Take all the time you need. I've waited 15 years. I can wait longer." "What if I decide I don't want a relationship? What if meeting you is enough?" Jada felt her heart crack, but she forced a smile. "Then I'll be grateful I got to meet you at all, that I got to see the incredible person you've become. That's more than I ever thought I'd have." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to hurt you." "Sophie, you exist. You're happy. You're loved. That's all I ever wanted. Everything else is just extra." They hugged then, awkward and brief, but real. And when Jada pulled away, she memorized the feel of her daughter in her arms, not knowing if she'd ever get to hold her again. In the car, Marcus held Jada while she sobbed. "She might not want me in her life," Jada gasped. "I might never see her again. This might have been it." "I know. It hurts so much. How can it hurt this much?" "Because you love her. And sometimes love means accepting that you can't have what you want, even when you finally find it." As they drove back to Seattle through the rain, Jada understood a fundamental truth. Meeting Sophie hadn't healed the wound of giving her up. If anything, it had made it deeper, because now she knew exactly what she'd lost. But she also knew that Sophie was loved, was whole, was everything Jada had hoped she'd be. And maybe that had to be enough. Maybe sometimes the happy ending wasn't getting what you wanted. Maybe it was knowing that what you gave up had flourished without you. And in Portland, Sophie stood in her room, holding the birthday card Jada had given her. Inside was a simple note. "I love you. I've always loved you. Whatever you decide, that will never change. Jay." Sophie didn't know what she wanted yet. Didn't know if she could make room in her life for a birth mother, or if meeting Jada had simply closed a chapter she'd needed to finish. All she knew was that her heart hurt in ways she'd never experienced, and that sometimes getting the answers you'd been searching for just led to harder questions. Sometimes finding what you'd lost meant discovering that some things couldn't be recovered, only grieved. And that was the saddest truth of all.